Welcome, everybody. I see people are joining us, and I want to welcome you to the seventh installment of our Adventures in Field Research seminar series. Today, it is my great pleasure to introduce one of our own, Dr. Noel Cawley, Associate Professor here at Lincoln Memorial University. And she's going to give us a talk that she calls Changes in Gopherus Polyphemus colony population structure in response to relocation. I do want to let everyone know that we will have a discussion period at the end of Dr. Cawley's talk. So at that time, feel free to unmute your mic and ask questions. It'd be nice to have a great discussion. If you're afraid that you might forget your question during the talk, take advantage of that chat button at the bottom to preserve your question. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Cawley.
Okay, now I need to share my screen. All right. And I think I'm okay. Am I okay?
Yes.
Just my presentation. So sorry, everybody, I haven't done a Zoom share screen meeting before. This research was originally called Can We Find Our Way Home? And the Gopher tortoise population was relocated. My outline is, I'm not used to using the buttons. Okay, I'm going to talk about a couple different things. My educational background is from land-grant universities. So we had big research projects with lots of funding and just lots of personnel, lots of equipment. Everything was very readily available. But now I'm at a school where my job is essentially teaching. Research is nice, but if I'm going to be doing it, it's going to be mostly during the summer, unless I could find something for students to do. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about finding possible research projects. I prefer doing things outside. We have a conservation biology program where we have a lot of students who are interested in the outdoor aspect of biology and science. But there's some there's some issues with finding possible research. Sometimes it's hard to do. And so my outline is finding projects, some things to consider when looking at projects, management plans, your monitoring, and for me, my surprise study. There was something that occurred that was not anticipated when I initially started doing the work. So if you were interested in monitoring organisms in general, these are 3 of these I have monitored, and 1 I'm going to probably start monitoring. The one on the right top corner, that's a gopher tortoise. And I'm familiar with them because my PhD research was at Fort Benning, Georgia, looking at ecological indicators. And one of the organisms in a lot of places there was the gopher tortoise. And while my study didn't include him directly, I did look at his habitat frequently. On the top left is actually damage caused by timber harvesting. This is inadvertent damage to trees that were in perfect health that they caused. So I did a survey of that. Bottom left is a spring ephemeral plant. I do plant surveys for a park here in Kentucky. So we're in Tennessee. It's only about a half hour from me. So looking at different, which organisms are there, they have historical data. So try to compare the historical data to what we're presently finding. So that's pretty interesting. And then the last organism that I may start to monitor is also found at that park, and it's green salamanders. That's the little one in the center. So you can choose an organism to monitor. If you don't know about the organism, you can certainly learn about them. You are a scientist. I would suggest trying to do non-invasive surveying because it's much easier to get permission. That's one of the hurdles to overcome, is getting your permits. In regards to doing projects of any sort, I would suggest state parks or private lands. Believe it or not, it's very difficult to find people who will let you work for free. And especially when you have all these major credentials, that doesn't mean they're going to let you come out there and do anything. And you're like, come on. I mean, I'm very valuable. And they're just like, well, maybe, are you sure? State parks are kind of my go-to. Typically, they don't have the funding they need to do a lot of research or the personnel. They do a lot of interpretive work with the general public, so that their time is just restricted. And while they'll have summer hires themselves, those people are often untrained. So my go-to is state parks, but another one is potentially private lands, such as timber companies that are producing, they're raising pine for paper and eventually, but you can make them look really good when you do Gopher tortoise surveys saying, hey, we're providing great habitat. That's valuable for that industry to get this positive research performed for them. They might even pay you. Also, wherever you're looking at, ease of access. Can you get there readily? I do research in 2 places. In the summer, I'm in Florida. So my Gopher tortoise research is in Florida. They don't live up here. But I teach here in Kentucky. So I do my plant surveys up here in Kentucky, and I'm trying to find other organisms to also survey. You will need to eventually contact who can give you the okay for doing work there. So again, this is that problem of finding someone who'll talk with you, who you can work for free. But this gets tricky because you just need a human voice. Email has completely destroyed all communications between human beings. If you want information, you show up physically. I would suggest a Monday, because most people have to go to work on Mondays. Okay, so you want to track these people down and then convince them how wonderful you are. And you might get bounced around a bit, but in person is really the way you need to go. And you want a place that's pretty convenient for yourself in general, because we're going to get to your surveying. That can take a lot of time. You know, you don't want to be driving 3 or 4 hours away typically, or at least not during the school year. Okay, so who can give you okay? You can find management plans. Different states and parks have different requirements, but in those management plans, they will typically have the species of interest or concern in that park. So you can come to them saying, hey, I can do this. I understand you are interested in this organism, and you can come to them and have some type of plan to put to them. You should know your methods beforehand, and it could just be transect survey, total survey. I'm a total survey fan. And you do need to know about the organism, where you should be looking. You know, Gopher tortoises, they don't live near ponds. You know, there's no reason to go look in hardwoods. You need to know that. I think one of the most crucial things you can do for an agency is the baseline survey. This is going to take you the longest amount of time. I'm a fan of total survey, but with this total survey, you do use maps, and particularly the map for the plant community, so you're looking in the right place. There's no point in looking, you know, in the water if it's a tortoise. Okay, we don't want to do that. And then by further study, for myself, ended up being, did the Gopher tortoises, can they come back? Can they find their way back home? But you can do follow-up studies. Say if the agency is trying to improve their site conditions, or they're implementing programs or procedures to make habitat more desirable for an organism, you do your baseline study. They know where the organism's found. They do this work. Then you can see, did the organism move into this area where they did this work? And that supports their research. And it may nix it. It may say it didn't work. You're missing a step. So that's also valuable information. So these, to me, are things that you can look at when you're trying to find research for yourself. Yeah, when you're essentially at an institute where your primary function is teaching, I think this is a good idea. And you can look at all kinds of things. And if you didn't like looking at the little slimy critter, go find something else next time. You know, because no one's you're working for free, so they can't make you come back. Okay, you do need to preserve your reputation and do a good job for them. But if you didn't like it that much, you know, make a student do it. I'm just kidding. Just kidding about the student. This is just two different sites I looked at, trying to find species for Kentucky, since that's one of the places I look at. The right-hand side in the gray box, that's the information for the nature preserves at kentucky.gov. So this is a booklet, essentially, the state of Kentucky puts out, telling you of all the endangered, threatened, and special organisms that they're interested in and where they live. So they tell you what habitat to look in. So I think this is a really good source. So for you to demonstrate your knowledge about possible organisms that you're interested in. And then on the left-hand side, this was the only way I could find it, unless I wanted to enter all this, which I didn't want to do. There's a number of different websites there for Kentucky that you can go to that, again, gives you information about those organisms. Okay, so that's something you could do to find out. And again, you need to do this search for every state, because every state arranges everything differently, because it wouldn't be fun to be uniform. This is in Florida, the parks each have to have a management plan. So this is the management plan, a paragraph taken from 2005 on the left side. And then they decided to make tables in 2019 on the right-hand side. But what we could see is gopher tortoises are mentioned, monitoring and inventory of populations of rare plants and animals, which gopher tortoises aren't particularly rare, but they're a species of interest and concern, and I believe threatened in Florida. The right-hand side, the gopher tortoise is the last one on the list. They have management action plans. That includes doing burns to maintain their habitat, because they like a more open habitat. Also, you bring back vegetation, which is their food source. When you look at this, you could also see their monitoring plan level is tier 1. Okay, let's see what tier 1 is. Next slide here. Tier 1. Oh, by casually driving around and walking around in the park where 3 people are covering 6,000 acres, I will say, oh, golly gee, there was a gopher tortoise over there today. Yay! Not very helpful, though. The one area that I talk about in my research, the power line, everyone knows there's gopher tortoises there because they have been there for probably at least 20 years, if not longer. Well, it has been at least 20 years because I've been associated with that park that long. So tier 1 doesn't do a lot. Then you have these different other tiers. I did a tier 3 population estimate. So approximation of a true population size of the gopher tortoises in this park. So this was San Velasco Hammock State Park Preserve in Florida. And I did what's considered the hiking trails rather than the bike side, which was agricultural. Though they have some gopher tortoises there, they weren't the, don't have the traditional habitat. So we were interested in this area and finding out how many are there. Gopher tortoises themselves. Again, this is my gopher tortoise. He is actually crouching down because he sees me and he says, you're going to, well, don't remember if this is a boy or a girl, but he says, you're going to pick me up to see if I'm a boy or a girl. And I don't like being picked up. Okay. They don't like being picked up. Given the opportunity, the gopher tortoise will either crouch down when being approached or will walk really fast trying to get to its burrow to get away from you. And they do have good hearing. They can hear vehicles and they're skedaddling fairly quickly considering what they are, but you can chase them down. With the gopher tortoise, if you look at its carpus, which is the top shell on the gopher tortoise, you measure the length of that from where it sits its head to the back at its tail. Traditionally, we've used the numbers 10 inches in length, or since we're doing metric, 25.4 centimeters long is considered to be the mature female, meaning she's sexually mature female, and it's assumed it's the same for males. I did see some numbers now saying they're doing more things to the gopher tortoises, setting them and seeing if they're possibly sexually mature earlier. But I didn't, so some are mature before 10 centimeters, I'm sorry, 25.4 centimeters in length. It takes the males 9 to 12 years to become that size, sexually mature. Females, it could be 10 to 21 years. So longer time. And much of this is diet dependent. San Francisco Hammock Preserve State Park, that's actually a pretty rich community. A lot of the vegetation is pretty high nutrient compared to much of Florida. So meaning their gopher tortoises probably grow a little faster than other ones. Things that gopher tortoises do, they often live in colonies. You know, when I show you my maps, you could see there's quite a few colonies. Their interaction isn't, they don't tend to hang out together. They're individuals within a colony, but they do live in colonies. You do have isolated individuals, but they often are in groups. They spend a lot of time in the burrow. Florida, they're essentially active from sometime in March, depending on how warm it gets, till maybe through October. And they'll still pop out. You know, you get a couple warm days in December, they'll be at their burrow. They'll be sitting at the top of the burrow, looking around, sunning. But their activity time, North Florida, is more or less March through October, and is weather dependent. They will migrate a bit and move around, mostly for purposes of breeding, or just they will have summer and winter residences. We have a gopher tortoise who lives on our property, and she stays in one burrow in the wintertime that I know is not connected to the burrow that she hangs out in the summertime. Okay, so they will have two drastically different, two very different locations, and most likely due to food and or possibly temperature, because the burrows are very climate controlled. So what works in the summertime may not work in the wintertime. It'll be too warm. They are strictly herbivores. They do not eat any meat at all, strictly plants. And you can see they're not very tall, so they need to get, they need understory vegetation. They don't eat trees, even if they're little, okay? They're long-lived. Considering it takes them 20 years to get sexually mature, they better live for a while. Their survival rate is not great for eggs or juveniles. Everything eats their eggs. And the juveniles, they're tiny, the shells are soft, and pretty much if given the opportunity, everyone will eat them also, but often the eggs don't make it. They will just be consumed, and I'll show you why here in just a second. Whoops, I knew I was going to roll too fast. Okay. Why do we care about these gopher tortoises other than they're tortoises, and most people like tortoises? They're keystone species. And they're keystone species not because they're so special, it's because their burrows are so special. Okay, so their burrows, which can be like 15 feet long and go as deep as 6.5 feet, they have 350 commensal species live in the burrows. This is some specialized microhabitat for some species. This over here on the right-hand side is a, I can't tell actually if that's a frog or a toad. We do have gopher frogs, which are known for living in gopher tortoise burrows. I don't think this is one though, because those are 2 to 4 inches. And you can see this little guy's on somebody's fingers, and not too many people have 2-inch fingers that are 2 inches wide. So I'm gonna say it's not one of them, but he's one of those who was dug up in the relocation effort. But the big thing that the gopher tortoise does is these burrows. There's just organisms that really depend on them. Pine snakes, gopher tortoises, and not gopher tortoises, gopher frogs, and Florida mice are 3 main organisms that are of interest that that associate closely with these burrows. I'm always wanting to push the wrong button here. Okay. This here, I mentioned earlier, when you do a survey, you want to know what kind of habitat your organism likes. So it's really, and typically a park, they're going to have their basic plant communities. All right. So if we look at the big green area first, gopher tortoises aren't in that big green area. Those are hardwoods. Those are hardwood forests. They might be right next to the boundary, but there is no reason to be, wait, where's my mouse? Here's my mouse. Don't look over here for gopher tortoises. They won't be over here. Okay. They prefer sandhill communities is probably their favorite. Those are the yellow areas that show on this map. Then they have upland pine areas, which are in the brown. Those areas, the upland pine, those soils are a little bit more moist than sandhill. Sandhill is very dry community. The upland pine gets encroached upon pretty easily from the hardwoods because more water is available to them that hardwoods need. So when you see, it's not unusual to see if you have upland pine that it's actually being encroached upon. This area on the left here, that I'm showing with mouse, there's hardly any gopher tortoises there. There's very little understory and lots of hardwood moved in, even though this map is saying that's upland pine. Let me look at this. Okay, with this map, I'll mention this because I'm remembering to mention it right now. You see this line going through here? Okay, that's Interstate I-75. You are not allowed to light a fire next to an interstate where the smoke's going to carry across the interstate and cause a massive pileup of cars. You will never get a burn permit to do that. So you do have problems if your ecosystem is near something like that. You're going to lose that ecosystem. You may want to make plans to adjust for that, to try to move it inwards, but it is bad form to cause massive car accidents, and you can't do it. They actually have the same problem down here, though this is a much smaller road, but maintaining this area as it was a beautiful sandhill, but you are getting here, you see those green, that means those pesky hardwoods are in there and they're moving in. So hardwood encroachment is one of the difficulties facing our gopher tortoise. But the other areas they like are the ruderal areas, which means the power line. Places that have high disturbance, very bare. So what you want to do is look at this straight line. Straight line, this is the right of way. This is the easement that the power poles are all along here. And they need to be 100 feet wide. So that's a lot of area for gopher tortoises to be living in, because that's going to be almost all going to be herbaceous vegetation, because they come and cut down trees and bushes and things every few years. So this is also habitat, but so this gives you're getting an idea where we find gopher tortoises. But this is something, if you're looking at monitoring other species, you want to remember, okay, let me look at my plant community. Where does this organism like to be? So you don't want to waste time, because this is a lot of work. This took way longer to do than I thought it would do. Because you're out there walking every day and you say, oh yeah, I can work 12 hours a day. Yeah, by noon, 90 degrees, 90% humidity, you already finished your water and you have an hour and a half walk out. You say, no, I'm not lasting till 8 o'clock at night. It just does not happen. And then next day you say, I think I'll take today off and hang out at the pool. And then you go back. So this is pretty physically demanding. Okay, so we have that. Burrows. Okay, I am using burrows to figure out how many gopher tortoises I have here. So this is actually pretty important, because I don't need a permit to count burrows. I don't need a permit to measure burrows. If I want to tamper with my gopher tortoise, though, I need permits. So if there's something you can utilize that will give you a reasonable number about the presence of an organism, that's a good thing to use. I'm showing you, I have two pictures here, the one on the right and the one on the left. The one on the right is an active gopher tortoise burrow. You can tell it's active. For one, there's no debris in it. This white area in front is called the apron. And the gopher tortoise, this is very sandy soil, so he's always having to dig soil back out again, because he's moving in and out, and the sand moves in. So you always have this fresh sand appearance, very easy to spot when you have low vegetation, like that spot is there. So they're really easy to see on the power line. One of the things to notice is the shape for this burrow. It's much wider than it is tall. And this is significant because we have armadillos. And armadillos are not wide and they are tall. So if you have a 6x6 burrow, that's an armadillo's in there. Okay. While if you have a 10 wide, 5 high burrow, that's a gopher tortoise. Okay. So you need to be paying attention to that, and that helps you distinguish who's moved in there. Also, to maintain this shape, the gopher tortoise needs to be going in and out. I've seen people say, well, what's hard to tell if it's active? I'm like, why? Because I know this gopher tortoise burrow on my property, this is, we have bats above it. Bats do impolite things, which is probably why the gopher tortoise stopped using that hole. But the sides start collapsing very quickly. In about 3 weeks, that you lose the corners. So it's, within a short period of time, a reasonable amount of time, that this is no longer being utilized. Also, you can see there's lots of debris in there, leaves and stuff that would not be there. So when you classify, it's active, abandoned. So those are the easy ones. Sometimes the dormant can be sketchy. If you're in a place where there is some leaf litter still falling down, you might have it covered, especially if because gopher tortoises almost always have 2 burrows. And it's not unusual for them to actually have 2 entrances to what's actually 1 burrow. Okay. And actually this one here, she moved her entrance to another side where there's no bat house right above it. But I'm sure she's went into the same burrow. I mean, why would you go dig another burrow? I mean, no one does more work than they need to. So I can use burrows, and there's a good amount of documentation for this. I'm using Nomani et al. In 2008, their paper. Their correction factor is they take active burrows, divide them by 2, and then it's plus or minus 0.09 for the population estimate. They also use the dormant, which is your number of dormant ones times 0.04. For what I did on the power line, there were no dormant ones, so that's why I didn't put it up here. But you do count the dormant, but it's a very small percent. So basically, if you have 100 burrows, we're figuring that there's actually 50 gopher tortoises there. Okay. I think that's all I had to say about that. Okay, so this is the data from my first monitoring, my baseline effort. So this was 2015 and 16, where I walked all over this park. I did the power line in 2015, that summer. Okay, so that's this whole length here. And then all the rest of it, which takes, this is hot. The power line is really hot. You're in the sun. You end up stopping pretty early. This is hot too, but not so much sun, but you're going through stuff. There's lots of there's much more vegetation on the ground that you're walking through. It takes longer to find things. By the way, don't take phone calls when you're walking around and you're not on a trail. Because when I'm over in here, just walking around looking for burrows and you're looking for their trails. When you're on the phone, you stop looking at where you're walking, and then you look up and you realize you don't know where you are anymore. So don't take cell phone calls while you are walking around. If you take a call, stop. It's like texting. Don't text and drive. When you're in the woods walking around, don't talk on a phone and walk around, because you will find out you don't know where you are. And you get over it. And worst case, I would have had to call somebody and say, drive over here and beep the horn until I find you. But then I'd look really stupid. I didn't want to do that because I'm working for free and I want to maintain my reputation because I'm working for free. Okay, so that's one thing you should not do. Oh, and in this area too, we have wild hogs. So if you see something that kind of looks like a puppy running down the power line, don't go try to pet it. It's not a puppy. It'll be kind of an odd shaped puppy. It's a little pig. And little pigs are usually in groups, okay? So don't make friends with the pigs because they don't like people. They know you're going to try to kill them. So, and they're fast. Pigs are super, super fast. It's amazing how fast they are. So don't talk on the cell phone. And don't try to pet wild pigs or piglets, because it's the piglets that are so cute. Those are things you should be careful with here. And that really the other things that I found was just water and ticks. You want enough water, and ticks are going to bite you. Just get over it. There's nothing you can do about it. Take them off. Let's see. But okay, this is showing my population. Okay, so power line, very, very popular. And everyone knew they were on the power line. And they knew they had these gopher tortoises here. They didn't know that the power line was only 42% of their population. But that's a significant thing to find out, that you have, we have gopher tortoises, but where we thought they all were, and then a few others scattered about, well, no, you had 58% scattered about. So that was important for them to know. That was really good information that I acquired for them. So I was very pleased with that. Let me see, what's that next slide? Oh, and this is, I'm showing you the number of burrows, and I sorted them out by width. They are in centimeters because we use metric, except when we have a tape measure and we're at a gopher burrow hole, and then we're using English measurement. 25.4 is my 10 inches. So these two columns here are showing you numbers of burrows. Everything's done in numbers of burrows, and remember we cut that in half, and that's probably giving us our actual gopher tortoises. So number of burrows of the sexually mature are the two columns on the right. The not mature are on the left. Okay, and these are my little juveniles, so some little ones in here. One of the things I ended up finding out from doing this later study is a lot of the juveniles are actually hanging out with the adults in their burrows. So that data that people are putting out is potentially not accurate. But yeah, most of my population, let's see, 50 and 20 is 70. So I have like 35 sexually mature gopher tortoises living on the power line, and everyone else is living out somewhere else. Okay, and then I have like another 10, 12 or 15. Actually, I think it was, I decided on the number 42 gopher tortoises for my power line. So this is strictly just the power line data because I use it for my comparison. This is where my surprise study comes up. Can they find their way home, my gopher tortoises? What happened was the 95 burrows, the count of 95 burrows was done summer of 2015. And I continued to collect data till 2016 for the rest of the park. In 2016, the power company decided they're going to replace the power poles. Okay, which means they dig up and move the gopher tortoises. Yes, they take them out because they're at risk if they're left in there by heavy equipment, and they can get crushed. So in the fall of 2016, they dug up the gopher tortoises. Now they hired an environmental company to do this. So this was my surprise study. Yeah, this is what I did not expect to get to do, but it's pretty cool and provides good information to the park. This is what the power line easements looks like. Vehicles there, different people working here. This burrow on the right-hand side is actually not going to be dug out. It's just being marked. It's far enough from the power pole, so it's not going to be endangered because of their activities, but they're marking it so none of the vehicles drive over it. On the left-hand side is showing you the easement. So it should be 50 feet to either side of those power poles. This is the easement's 100 feet. This material here, the purpose of it is to keep the gopher tortoise out once you remove them, because otherwise they'll come scurrying back home. Okay, so you go through trouble digging them up, you don't want them to come back in. Okay, so these strips are all over the place with the idea of keeping them out. The way they do this is back-breaking work. Okay, how do you remove gopher tortoises? Remember, their burrows are 15 feet long and could be 6.5 feet deep. The picture on the right, you see that's PVC pipe going down into a hole. That's probably 15 or 16 feet long, that PVC pipe. They do that so they could see the direction the hole is going, because gopher tortoises have no need. They're not people. They don't need to go in a straight line. They go all over the place. So they actually have a skilled backhoe operator. This is not just somebody who they say, hey, it's your turn. This is somebody who they're really good with this. It was really interesting watching them do this. And they gently dig out along the PVC pipe until they know how long it is that they put in. So at a certain point, they no longer use the backhoe and they dig by hand. So I think they had 3 different people switching off. This is brutal, back-breaking work. They're using a shovel. They're on their hands and knees, and they're digging at least 3 feet in. Just lengthwise 3 feet. Who knows how deep they necessarily have to go? Because they don't want to use the backhoe, because they don't want to get too close to the gopher tortoises. Okay, so we had 95 burrows. 10 of them were not disturbed, so 85 burrows. Over here on the left-hand side is an adult, probably a female, but I don't know. And up here in the corner is one of the juveniles. So this fall of 2016, they're relocating them. It's like September and October, and they already had some cold days too. So this was, they were really pushing the time limit on when they should be moved. But what they got were they dug out 23 females, 12 males, 19 juveniles. Now, my data that I did on the survey, I think I had 2 or 3 juveniles that would be that size. So that's one I think is really interesting. The only way you can do that, though, is be digging out gopher tortoises, which kind of ruins the whole idea of protecting them if you're going to go around digging them up. But I think that, again, is good information, because it's kind of reassuring. We have a whole lot more juveniles than we realized, but they were all in with the adult burrows. Okay. When they relocated them, they didn't have a plan. They did the adults. They drilled a hole in their shell, the carapace, but they didn't. There was no numbering or anything put on them. They measured them, checked their general appearance for health, and relocated them. Juveniles that were in a burrow with an adult, and all of them were, they relocated with that adult. And they pretty much just drove around till they found a good place, what looked like a good place to put them. And there's plenty, there's good habitat there, but I'm mentioning this because we have no real knowledge of how far away they were taken. And that's an important thing to consider. All right, so this is what they removed. Here's a little juvenile, so see how small that is. Because those fingers are probably 3 inches long, so it's pretty small. Gopher tortoise. And then here's my frog again, my questionable frog. And then the people, the environmental company, they were real careful with anything in the burrow with them. They gently removed, and they didn't like put it to the side and then dump a bunch of soil on it or anything. They they looked after the organisms that they found. This is my survey to see how did the population come back. So what were my numbers coming back after to the late 2016 removal event. So in summer of 2015, I had 95 burrows. In November 16th, this is after they moved everybody that they were going to move, I had 10 burrows. And then I started surveying the following year. I started in May and was really anal about it and did it the 17th of every month because I get neurotic that way. Let's see. We did have some movement in May. With our gopher tortoises, they will be active about mid-October to March and will potentially move around then looking for breeding grounds or where they may spend the summer, because sometimes their summer, winter, the places they live are different. Foraging distance, though, has only really been documented at 1 to 40 meters. So they were moved beyond that distance. So they were moving, I'm sorry, the ones that were moved, if they came back, they traveled a ways. They didn't just happen to stop in to get a bite or something. the males do most of the moving in spring, but males and females will move like starting May and June too, though. If they're not completely satisfied with where they are, they will potentially migrate to another spot. But that power line, remember, that power line colony has been in place for 20 years. Pretty much everyone knows if you want to meet a boy or girl tortoise, this is the place to be. They're here. This is a good spot. So they're moving. It makes sense. I was surprised no one moved in June, but in May, my population or my burrow number doubled. July 17th, it went up again. Didn't double, but it went up 50%. Then I still have movement in September. I added to it. And then December was my next sampling time because I work in Kentucky and this is in Florida. So anywhere from September 17th on till December 17th, those gopher tortoises moved. Okay, but I went here. We look at number of burrows in the summer, 95, and in December 17th, essentially a year after they were moved, maybe a year and a month, I have half the number of burrows. So then they certainly came back though from 10 in November 16th, looking at December 17th. I definitely had I shouldn't have said come back. I definitely had gopher tortoises take advantage of the now available habitat to move into, because they will do some relocating on their own. So I want to point that out. But we can see the populations. But now I check this like every year, and it still has not come back to this number of 90. Yeah, you get a few holes get abandoned, or they decide to move them. Let's see, this is looking at, on my left, I've shown Gopher Tortoise survey for 2017. It's everybody, not just the power line. But the next 2 more slides, it's going to be just the power line. And then my old data. And if you look at this, you can see pretty much my gopher tortoises are still in the same area. So that power line, you can see a real diminish in numbers here, which we counted the burrows. There were fewer. Looks like a few more might have ended up over in this area. This area may have lost a few, but they're certainly in the same place, other than fewer on the power line. They didn't go move over into the woods, except this one. That one got confused. This is showing you all the burrows from the initial survey, and then the second survey everywhere. And again, it's just basically showing you, this is one area where we lost some burrows. I did survey this area again, and they just weren't there. So I don't know why maybe they're the ones who moved to the power lines and the other ones like their new homes. That would be a possibility. Over here, again, just putting the vegetative community in, so you see that they are essentially in what habitat they should be in. Other than this one's in mesic flatwoods, which is, that tends to be a bit wet. So I'm kind of surprised that they're in there, though there's a good chance it might be on the road edges. Gopher tortoises love road edges. This is showing you data of the power line, and I'm going to show you both years in a minute. This is my number of burrows sorted by width in 2017. So this is the population after the removal effort occurred. And you can see it's heavily skewed because I used the same measurements. So these 2 columns to the right, those are 25.4 centimeters or 10 inches in size. So these are sexually mature, while these are, we're presuming, are sexually immature. Almost all the population is now skewed heavily to the right. Okay. When I compare the two, here I'm comparing percent burrow by width. The yellow is showing you my 2015 survey, and the red is showing you the 2017 survey. And I did do a chi-square on association, independence. Some people use to call it independence and association, and they were significantly different. So doesn't just look like it, really is significantly different. And the big things being, one, you have fewer organisms, but for better or worse, you have you don't have any of the up and coming. There's no teenagers available in the population at this time. Now, part of that makes sense though, because if they're not of mating age yet, they may be less inclined to move. Why go through the trouble of relocating if you still live at home with mom, which is highly inaccurate? Why move out and pay rent? So that may be part of what is going on here. Let's see. So whoops, I think I need to talk faster. I'm about done. This is one other piece of information I found interesting. I'm not certain how well you could see it. The little round circles are the initial, this is along the power line. So this line is the power line. The circles are the 2015 data. I'm showing the feet, 100 feet, because again, it's on the power line. So you need that much of an area cleared. The stars are 2017 data. What's showing up here is a bunch of the gopher tortoises moved into the woods. They can still access the food on the power line. But after, in 2016, they got carted off. In 2017, a salvage harvest operation started going on, and the trucks are driving up and down the power line. So apparently the gopher tortoises said enough, and I'm not going to live on the power line anymore. So quite a few of them, more than had previously anyhow, moved into the woods where no trucks can run them over. And this is Perils for the gopher tortoise. This is showing you what the road looks like along the power line, where vehicles like trucks go. Here's my gopher tortoise here. Here's a track, or my burrow, I beg your pardon. Here's a track for the trucks. This truck was good enough to park on top of the gopher tortoise because he didn't want to get in anyone's way on a road that nobody uses. He was a very thoughtful kind of guy. So it's sometimes hard to deal with some of the people you deal with when you're with the park. But okay, how does this information help? So this is actually valuable information that this state agency is getting that they probably couldn't get on their own. So with these monitoring plans, I can find out have my actions have the actions of the park improve the habitat for the organisms, such as burn cycle. When I burn this community, did the gopher tortoises move into there and start? I can't swear to this one moved from here or there without spending money, but I can be pretty confident that if there are no burrows there and there are now burrows, that those were gopher tortoises went over there and dug those burrows. I could also look at cutting of hardwoods because I'm losing burrows. My burrows are now the shape of armadillo holes and no longer will have gopher tortoises living in them. That could tell me I need to start cutting some hardwoods out because the environment's changing too much. I can determine, has the organism responded to my habitat improvement by utilizing this monitoring. So this is where it's really important to have a really good baseline for your organism, because then you can use it to determine how your future actions are impacting this area. And is your plan working? That's what I said at the beginning. You also have changes in the organism's location could also indicate that something else is going on in the environment. So that's, again, is crucial information. Okay, lastly, acknowledgements. I'd like to thank the Cumberland Mountain Research Center here at LMU for supporting my research. That was very helpful. And then also the park, San Velasco Hammock Preserve State Park, which is managed by the Department of Environmental Protection of Florida. And two people there in particular, Jesse Natwick, who helped me with my maps, and Douglas Pearsall for assisting with sampling, particularly just dropping me off so I didn't have to walk in and out, and some data collection too. Let me see. This last picture, thank you for listening to my presentation. This is what a sandhill community is supposed to look like when it's following the proper burn regime. So those black sticks in the back, those are pine trees. Those are longleaf pines. All those flowers are there because they burn properly. They're burning in season, and you get all these wildflowers present. You stop doing that, you don't have any more pretty flowers. No food for gopher tortoises. Everything's sad, but it's really pretty when you burn properly. And that is my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it interesting.
I very much enjoyed it, Dr. Cawley.
Thank you.
Fascinating work. At this time, I'd like to invite you all to ask some questions or make some comments. Let's have a discussion about Dr. Cawley's work.
Hey, Dr. Cawley.
Hi.
I wanted to ask you. So I saw pictures of a backhoe, and I was just wondering, are you trained to operate heavy machinery?
I'm not trained to operate it, but I tell my students to seriously consider learning how to use heavy equipment, because one, they can make lots of money.
Yeah.
And in this case, they're not using the shovel to dig the hole in 90-degree temperatures. They're in the backhoe.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's awesome.
I have a question as well. I know that you said that sometimes you could find the juveniles in the burrow with the mature tortoises, but do mature tortoises ever live in the same burrow together that are in the same colony?
They will sometimes be in the same burrow together, but more likely because they're responding to a disturbance, like maybe they hear a vehicle coming, and that's the closest burrow, so they'll both go into the same burrow. They tend to, but in their normal day-to-day activities, they don't share burrows. They'll be within the same community, and it's often like a 2-to-1 ratio of male, 2 females to 1 male. But they're not interacting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I will remember your advice not to go pet the piglets. But I have a question relative to the piglets and the bigger adult pigs. Do they have any impact? I know in some parts of the United States, the populations have grown exponentially and caused a lot of problems for habitat destruction and such. Do they represent a threat, or how do they coincide with the turtles?
The gopher tortoises know the wetlands areas and any species that are depending on the creeks, which are pretty pristine. Those get a lot of damage from the hogs. They use the baited traps and cameras now, so that the trap door shut once they have somebody, I think, who's with Fish and Wildlife now is the person they pick. But that person monitors with cameras his traps, and when there's enough hogs in it, he shuts it, and then he goes and kills them. He uses a silencer. But hogs are smart too. Yeah, once you've trapped them in a given location, that's it. They're not going to go back. So you have to pick and choose your time wisely, but they're almost impossible to get rid of once you have them. They essentially manage the population, but there's always a few that escape, and you don't find them till the population's up again, and then you have to come back with the traps.
All right, I'll ask one more question relative to your work. Can you tell us a little bit about the natural predators of the gopher tortoise?
Oh, well, once they're of size, their shells harden. Things that there's fewer predators. The eggs, everybody likes the eggs, and they're in that apron typically. So raccoons can find them right away. Foxes, coyotes, which are all in the park. Dogs are a problem, especially on private property. Dogs love chewing the poor little guy's feet off. I don't know why. But yeah, they chew off they can't pull in. The little feet are still sticking out there, so they chew their feet off, which is really horrible. And that reduces their ability to survive. So for people's dogs, animals themselves, so I think those are probably your main predators for them. But yeah, I think that the clutch is between like 5 and 10 eggs. So snakes, I'm sure will also eat them too. But yeah, it's actually very few of them actually hatch. Then they're under threat by predators too. But it's that hatching is just getting to hatch is the hardest obstacle to overcome.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
I think we're about at the end of our time. We'll give another opportunity for any questions. Do we have any additional questions or comments?
How long does it take a tortoise to build a burrow?
It doesn't seem to take them very long at all. They're really good diggers. I've never seen one actually starting, but I've noticed mine that's at least filled in partially, and she'll have that cleaned out within an hour. Now it's not caved in, but I would imagine that they could be in at least 3 feet in have a 3 foot long tunnel within a few hours. I then imagine they take a break and do more the next day. Oh, one thing with the gopher, I forgot to mention this. The gopher burrow, the reason you can use its width to determine the length of the gopher tortoise is a gopher tortoise needs to turn around in its burrow. So that's why if the burrow has to be as wide as the length of the actual tortoise itself, otherwise it can't turn around.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Cawley. I must say that I very much enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you.
And I think it's some very important and very interesting work that you've done. So we very much appreciate the work that you've done and sharing it with us. I do want to take a moment to thank Lainey and John, who have done the major portion of the work in terms of organizing this and making sure we have speakers every week and the logistics work out. So thank you, Lainey and John. And I also want to put in a bit of a plug for next week. I hope that all of you will invite a friend or two and join us next week for the next installment of our Adventures in Field Research seminar series. Next week, we'll have Dr. Joseph De Silva from Norfolk State University with a talk he calls Parasites, Hosts, and Pursuits. So invite a friend, register for the next talk, check out Lincoln Memorial University and the School of Mathematics and Sciences on Facebook and Instagram. And you all have a great evening, a great rest of the week. Have some adventures, and we'll